Karen Read's retrial officially got underway this morning in Dedham. Read is accused of hitting and killing her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her car in Canton 3 years ago. Her first trial ended in a hung jury. Today, opening statements in her second trial began with the prosecution describing the scene where O'Keefe was found dead, where they say that Read told paramedics, quote, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him 3 times. Meantime, the defense said O'Keefe's injuries were not consistent with a car crash, and a police cover-up led to Read being blamed for his death.
And you're going to hear from our own lips in many of her statements, her admissions, and I dare say her admissions, that she told.
You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, rank has its privileges. And the evidence will show that's privileges that you don't get and I don't get. But apparently a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, and his friends, they do get.
Despite attempts by Read's lawyers to get her charges dismissed before today, she is facing the same counts as she did during her first trial, including the most serious charge, second-degree murder.
All right, let's go to our political commentator, NBC Boston, Sue O'Connell. She's been actually inside the courtroom for us all day. She's joining us live right now from Dedham. Sue, let's talk about the opening statements. The prosecution is trying to convince the jury that Karen Read killed John O'Keefe. How did they do, in your opinion, sort of making their case coming out of the gate this time around?
Yeah, Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, a very different sort of opening than Assistant District Attorney Adam Lally last trial. This trial, Hank Brennan is simply trying to state that Karen Read drank, she drove, and the result was a death, and it was John O'Keefe's death. And he's doing that by telling a pretty compelling narrative of a timeline of the events. But what he's doing that's different from what Adam Lally didn't do is that Hank Brennan is assigning technological pieces of what he will present as evidence and data to sort of really support the allegations that he's making. We're going to talk about John O'Keefe's cell phone and the temperature of the battery and what time that happened and when the phone moved. We're also going to talk about Karen Read's black box of her Lexus, which, you know, prosecution says they have more data from. So every argument that Hank Brennan made in that courtroom for the opening statements is going to be anchored in part by some technological evidence. We'll see if that's what actually makes it through to the jury and if it connects with them, Colton and Priscilla.
Well, Sue, I want to ask you the same question, but for the defense, how would you rate their opening arguments and what stood out to you?
So Alan Jackson made the opening statement to the jury, and what he's saying is basically there is so much reasonable doubt we shouldn't even be here. He really hung the entire case on fired former state trooper Michael Proctor, who of course was the lead investigator in this case for the Commonwealth. So he is saying that Proctor touched everything, and because Proctor touched everything, therefore there's lots of reasonable doubt. He's also saying there was no collision. So how could Karen have killed John if there was no collision? So he is also going to try and really support those allegations he's making with a bunch of expert evidence and digital evidence as well. So we'll be comparing experts and digital evidence as this trial gets going, Priscilla and Colton.
All right, well, Sue, really quickly, before we let you go, one of the things that I noticed on social media that sort of, I think a lot of people were sort of scratching their heads at today who were paying attention to this trial, the first witness who was called to the stand, that was Timothy Nuttall of the Canton Fire Department. He's the first responder who says that he heard Karen Read say, "I hit him." He was called to the stand last time in the first trial, but certainly was not the first witness. What can you tell us about his testimony and how the prosecution and the defense used it?
Yeah, the last time the prosecution tried to build the story of who John O'Keefe was, which is usually the right thing to do, but it took too long to get to sort of the evidence of the scene. The fire department paramedic Nuttall actually did a good job when he was being questioned by the prosecution, but when Alan Jackson got up, there were a lot of inconsistencies about when he said he heard Karen Read say, "I hit him," how many times he said he heard Karen Read said, "I hit him," and to whom he said Karen Read said, "I hit him." So it was all over the place. I watched one juror just kind of wincing as Alan Jackson kept just trying to get the story that matched the video to match what was happening with the testimony that the paramedic gave before and that he was giving this time. So it was a bit of a stumble out of the gate on that front for the Commonwealth.
All right, Sue, thanks so much. Going to be really interesting to see the new evidence that's presented this time around.
Yeah.
Sue, thank you. Be sure to stay with us on NBC10 Boston for complete coverage of Karen Read's second murder trial. We will be carrying those court proceedings live every day over on NBC10, and you can also stream it on our YouTube page. You can also catch a recap of what happened every weeknight at 7 o'clock on Canton Confidential.